I'm at downtown Dubuque, Iowa, and it's a town of about 60,000 right on the Mississippi River. And it's really incredible, the buildings here. Probably the most buildings that I've seen with mud flood markings anywhere. And these buildings are largely untouched. It looks like the oldest, still old looking city with buildings that are mostly untouched of anywhere really that I've been. The red brick buildings with mud flood windows buried are everywhere. I'm going to show you these close up. And there are so many buildings like that here that I'm just going to show you clips of the ones that I see real quickly. You can see this one said to have been built in 1887. And you can see the amazing masonry work like on all of them. But that has a cylinder construction that goes out, and then all those bricks where they have stair stepping out all along, and I've covered that in the past on different buildings. But what I really want you to see is the way these buildings are built down lower. They're all on red brick on limestone type rock. And there's a theory that it's possible that the red brick held a charge and gave power to the building, and it was insulated by a different material down lower, which was originally much, much deeper, or actually above ground, would have been stories or multiple stories before you ever even got to the red brick. That's evidenced by the buried windows here, with actually still have stone arches over them. There's one, here's one. I'm just going to show you just a handful of them in this city. Being that it's on the Mississippi River, and there's so much really ancient looking structures around, and that's where really that would be ancient or old, is because the river was used as a thoroughfare for transportation and just everything. So we're going to take a look at as many of these as I can get. And here in Dubuque, Iowa, on West Locust Street, you can see this really old red brick house up on the berm. A lot of times you'll see there'll be streets, and then there'll be a wall, and then dirt land built up to the house. And why is that? Why do you have to walk way up the steps to get into such an old house? Well, in the case of a mud flood scenario, there would be another floor underneath that, but would be partially buried. And as we walk down the street, and we see that this is all built up with their lawn and walls, the next house over is not. And you can see what's underneath. And in this case, it goes lower than the actual dirt, and you have to step down stairs to go in down below, and the windows are boarded up. And they're working on this one, remodeling it, but you can see that the door is still underneath, and the entire floor, or part of it anyway, is showing. It's still a short door and doesn't go down as low as it could, but or as probably is under there. It's probably another floor under that. Whereas you can see on this house next door, just the start of the limestone is showing, and the arches are covered up. So this is a good example. Here's where the window's covered up here, of in many cities when you see these houses up on a hill above the road on both sides, why it's actually built up like that, because they're covering what's down below. So in this particular building, you'd have to have the lawn built up the stairways, and none of this would be showing. So it's food for thought on what is actually under these houses when you have berms built up, yards built up around the street, above the street on each side like this as you look down. And then many times would be right on the other side of the street also, back up again. So that's a good example of what actually is below, because one house has it, one house doesn't. Typically you'll drive down the street and they're all built up, thus covering what's actually below, which would very well hide the markings of what's called a mud flood. But in actuality, it most likely was not any sort of a flooding thing that happened where flood came in. It could be something as mysterious as what happens with popcorn. It just expands. It's possible the dirt expanded where it touched air and didn't expand where it did not touch air. Something raised it though, and whatever did that left a mess, left a situation where everything was buried and had to be dealt with and made to look like it never happened. And down on Kaufman and North Main Street, this old building, I just wanted to quickly show you that that has the same art that's buried right along the sidewalk. So that's one more example. There are hundreds, thousands. This street that goes up this hill was built by putting these massive stones in place all along here. And I'm going to show you both sides of these. It was built up and essentially a ramp was made that goes up that hill, which obviously partially has been an artificial created hill because it's more of a cliff. You can see it through the clearings, and that would have been a cliff, and so this massive wall was constructed all along here. It's pretty amazing in any case, but how old do you think this really is? With this wall, it's said to be the mid-1800s, before anybody even settled here. That would be 150 years ago. This wall looks way older than 150 years. And even so, just this stone right here is about almost 6 feet long and about 2.5 feet wide, 3 feet wide. The weight of that put in a wagon. Why not just have bricks? These stones are massive. The methods used for construction are seemingly unknown to us by looking at this. One more thing to show you the evidence that the storyline we've been told is not the one that actually took place. West 8th Street at Dubuque, Iowa. Here at Dubuque, Iowa, this amazing building, I just want you to see up close the masonry work. It's just incredible. Now, up high, the steeple is metal, but down below, the brickwork along here is really amazing. If you look just at this area, you have stone cut into a pyramid shape, but then when you look at these bricks, they had to be constructed just perfectly to make that corner a square corner that goes up, and so you can see the piece that's put in on the end, and it goes like that all the way up perfectly. And you'll notice that even on a wall like this, you're looking at the end of a brick here long ways, and then the bricks turn the other way here, so the end on this brick is here, and then on this is here, and on this is here, and it alternates, and it's done perfectly to where the line is right in the middle of the brick below, and it alternates like that and builds that wall. It steps in right there again with the pyramid structure, then it continues up, and then it steps in again and continues up all the way to this massive building. And what the original purpose was, well, it's thought that it was a power station. The reason why, or something relative to that, because they would all have sound cymatic ability with the organs, and the shapes in the glass would be reflective of those same cymatic patterns. And here, when you look at the architecture of the stone masonry work, it's very delicate. Just one step out, another step out, another one, and the arches are perfectly done. To the very top of the arch has two triangle shaped bricks that point down, and right between the two arches is the same. So all of these things are just done perfectly and exact when you look very closely at the detail. The lower levels are the same limestone, which possibly was put there to keep the entire thing from grounding out, if it were indeed used as a sort of battery, the iron in the brick, to hold that electricity or that charge. And this is what I'm talking about, the windows that would be put in that have to do with those patterns. And the study of that is extremely interesting. Now, these have come to be called churches all over, and you notice one will be a Catholic church, one will be a Protestant church, one will be something completely different, but they all have the same architecture and they're all claimed as that. And it's possible that these were never meant for that in the first place, and the true reason for them has been hidden, because these buildings have been here so much longer than what it said. You can see the mud flood patterns or the mud flood markings on the buildings adjacent that show that these were here long before something happened prior to when they were claimed to have been built in the late 1800s. This many bricks just to be made would take a massive brick company just to bring them in here. And you can be the judge of when you think these things were done. But this is a massive one. And the amazing work on it, as incredible as any. And just an amazing structure at Dubuque, Iowa. Hit like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.